Pack your bags and get out of my house. My mother-in-law Patricia screamed, throwing a crumpled rent agreement at my feet that demanded $4,200 monthly. The irony? I had paid cash for this house 3 years ago, but somehow my husband's entire family had convinced themselves they owned it. How did we get here? I'm Victoria Hayes, 34 years old, and I work as a software engineer for a major tech company in Seattle. When I met my husband Derek 5 years ago at a mutual friend's barbecue, he seemed like the perfect guy. Charming, attentive, and surprisingly grounded despite coming from a wealthy East Coast family. Or so I thought. We dated for 2 years before getting married, and during that time, Derek's family barely acknowledged my existence. His mother Patricia made passive-aggressive comments about my cute little tech job, and his father Gregory would always steer conversations away whenever I spoke. His younger sister Amanda openly rolled her eyes whenever I entered a room. But Derek assured me they'd warm up eventually. They're just protective, he'd say with that boyish smile that made me overlook so many red flags. When we got engaged, I decided to surprise Derek. I'd been saving aggressively since college, living frugally, investing wisely, and had built up a substantial nest egg. I found a beautiful 4-bedroom craftsman house in a quiet Seattle neighborhood, $850,000, and I bought it outright with cash. The deed had only my name on it, as I'd purchased it before our marriage. Derek, close your eyes, I said the day I got the keys. When he opened them in front of our new home, tears actually rolled down his cheeks. Vic, this is incredible. How did you? I've been saving, I said simply. I didn't mention the exact amount in my accounts or that I'd been doing freelance consulting work that nearly doubled my salary. Something told me to keep that information private. We got married in a small ceremony 6 months later. Derek's family attended, but spent most of the reception complaining about the budget venue I'd chosen. Never mind that the venue overlooked Puget Sound and cost $30,000. For the first 2 years of marriage, life was peaceful. Derek worked as a marketing manager, making decent money, and we split household expenses evenly even though I could have easily covered everything. I'd learned from my parents' divorce that financial transparency was important, but so was maintaining some independence. Then came the phone call that changed everything. Mom and Dad lost everything, Derek said one evening, his face ashen. Dad's investment firm collapsed. They're facing bankruptcy. And Amanda just got laid off from her PR job. My stomach dropped. How bad is it? They're losing their house in Connecticut. They have nowhere to go. I knew what he was going to ask before he said it. Can they stay with us? Just temporarily, until they get back on their feet. Every instinct screamed a no, but I looked at my husband's desperate eyes and heard myself saying, okay, temporarily. That was 6 months ago. Patricia, Gregory, and Amanda moved in with enough luggage to fill a moving truck. On day 1, Patricia walked through my house with a critical eye, saying, we'll need to redecorate. This style is so middle class. I bit my tongue. Within a week, they'd taken over. Patricia rearranged my kitchen, threw out my cookware because it wasn't the right brands, and started hosting her Connecticut friends for elaborate dinner parties, using my money for catering. Gregory converted my home office into his personal study, forcing me to work from the bedroom. Amanda treated the place like a hotel, leaving messes everywhere and complaining that we didn't have a housekeeper. But the real kicker? None of them contributed a single dollar to expenses. When I gently brought this up to Derek, he exploded. They lost everything. How can you be so heartless? They're family. I work full-time and pay all the bills, I countered. Your mother spent $800 on wine last week alone, on my credit card. Our credit card, he corrected coldly. We're married, remember? What's yours is mine. That's when I realized Derek had never actually understood that I owned this house. He assumed it was ours, and therefore his family had equal claim to it. Things escalated quickly after that. 2 months ago, I came home from work to find my bedroom door locked from the inside. What's going on? I called out, jiggling the handle. Patricia emerged, looking triumphant. We've moved you to the guest room downstairs. Gregory needs a proper bedroom suite for his health issues. You moved me out of my own bedroom? Don't be dramatic, dear. It's just more practical this way. I was too shocked to respond. Derek came home that night and actually agreed with his mother. Mom has a point. Vic Dad's been having back problems. They need the memory foam mattress. The memory foam mattress I'd bought specifically for my chronic neck issues. Last month, Amanda announced she was converting the garage into her content creation studio for her new lifestyle influencer career. She hired contractors, again, charging it to my credit card, without asking permission. When I objected, all 3 family members ganged up on me. "You're so selfish," Amanda shrieked. "After everything we've sacrificed for Derek," Patricia added with theatrical tears. Derek just stood there, saying nothing. That's when it hit me. My husband was never going to stand up for me. He'd chosen his family over his wife, and they knew it. Then came yesterday, the day everything exploded. I returned home early from work to find Patricia, Gregory, and Amanda sitting in my living room with a lawyer. Not my lawyer, their lawyer. "Victoria, sit down," Patricia commanded. "We need to discuss your living arrangements." "My living arrangements?" I repeated slowly. Gregory cleared his throat. "Given that you've been living here rent-free while we've invested in improvements to the property, we feel it's only fair that you start contributing your share." My mouth fell open. "Rent-free? I paid for this house." "Derek is our son," Patricia interrupted. "And as his wife, you have access to family assets. But you're not actually family." "Not really." The lawyer, a sharp-faced man named Howard, slid papers across my coffee table. "We're proposing $4,200 monthly rent, plus 30% of utilities, plus a contribution toward the property improvements Mrs. Amanda Hayes has commissioned." I couldn't breathe. $4,200 monthly rent? For MY House. "The house Derek provides for you," Patricia corrected with a snake's smile. "If you're unwilling to pay your fair share, we'll have to ask you to find alternative accommodations. We can't support freeloaders." "Freeloaders?" I stood up, hands shaking. "Where's Derek?" "Derek agrees this is the best solution," Gregory said smoothly. "He's at work, but he's reviewed and approved everything." That's when I saw it. Derek's signature at the bottom of their ridiculous rental agreement. My husband had actually signed off on charging me rent to live in my own house. Something inside me snapped, not into anger, but into crystal clarity. I pulled out my phone and called my lawyer, Benjamin Torres, whom I'd kept on retainer since purchasing the house. "Ben, I need you at my house immediately. Bring the property deed." Patricia laughed. "A lawyer? Really? This is family business." "Oh, we're way past family business," I said calmly. 20 minutes later, Ben arrived with his briefcase. He assessed the situation instantly. The hostile family members, their smug lawyer, the ridiculous rental agreement on my table. "Mrs. Hayes asked me to bring this," Ben said, pulling out the official property deed and laying it on the table. Howard leaned forward to read it, and I watched his face drain of color. "This deed shows sole ownership under Victoria Marie Hayes, purchased August 2020 with cash, before her marriage to Derek Hayes. This is her separate property under Washington state law." Patricia snatched the document. Her hands started trembling as she read. "This must be a mistake." Derek said. "Derek said what?" I interrupted. "That this was his house?" He was wrong. "I bought this house with my money before we got married. Derek's name isn't on the deed, which means legally, none of you have any claim to this property." Gregory's face turned purple. "You manipulative little." "Careful," Ben warned. "You're currently residing in my client's private property without a formal lease agreement, which makes you trespassers." "Trespassers?" Amanda shrieked. "We're family." "You're my husband's family," I corrected. "And you've been living here for 6 months without paying a single bill, while charging tens of thousands of dollars to my credit cards, taking over my home, and now attempting to extort rent from me for my own property." Their lawyer Howard was already packing his briefcase. I was not made aware of the actual ownership situation. "I'm withdrawing from this matter." "You can't just leave," Patricia yelled, but Howard was already out the door. I turned to Ben. "What are my options? Given they have no legal right to occupy the property and have demonstrated hostile intent, you can demand they vacate immediately. If they refuse, we file for emergency eviction." "You wouldn't dare," Gregory growled. I looked at each of them. These people who'd invaded my home, disrespected me daily, spent my money, and tried to make me pay rent for my own house. "You have 72 hours to leave. Everything you brought, you can take. Everything you bought with my money stays. And every dollar you've charged to my credit cards over the last 6 months, I'll be sending you an invoice." "Derek will never allow this," Patricia screamed. As if on cue, Derek walked through the door. "What's going on?" "Mom just texted me that." He stopped, seeing Ben and the papers scattered across the table. "Derek," I said quietly. Did you actually believe you own this house? His face answered before his words did. We're married. What's yours is mine. Not in Washington state, and not when I purchased it before we married. This house is mine. Only mine. And your family has 72 hours to get out. Vic, come on, they're my parents. Your parents just tried to charge me $4,200 monthly rent to live in my own home. Your mother moved me out of my bedroom. Your sister has racked up $47,000 on my credit card. And you, my voice cracked slightly, you signed an agreement to make me pay rent rather than defending me. Derek looked at the rental agreement, then at his family, then back at me. For a moment, I thought he might actually apologize. Instead, he said, if you kick them out, I'm going with them. My heart broke and healed simultaneously. Then pack your things too. Patricia's shock turned to rage. You'll regret this. We'll sue you for everything. Ben smiled coldly. Please do. I'd love to present evidence of your credit card fraud, illegal occupancy, and attempted extortion to a judge. Plus, Mrs. Hayes has security camera footage of everything. That wasn't technically true. I'd only installed cameras last week. But they didn't know that. The fight drained out of them instantly. Over the next 3 days, I watched them pack. Patricia kept trying to take my furniture, claiming she'd improved it. Ben had to threaten legal action twice. Amanda tried to guilt-trip me. You're ruining our lives. Where are we supposed to go? Maybe somewhere you can afford, I suggested. There are nice apartments for $1,500 a month in Tacoma. Derek barely spoke to me. He moved like a zombie, throwing his clothes into suitcases. On the final day, as he loaded the last box into his father's car, he turned to me. I never thought you'd choose a house over family. I didn't choose a house over family, I replied. I chose myself over people who don't respect me. There's a difference. He drove away without another word. The day after they left, I sat in my quiet, empty house and cried. Not because I missed them, I didn't, but because my marriage was over and I'd been too blind to see it was doomed from the start. Then I called a locksmith and changed every lock. I also called my credit card company and reported the fraudulent charges. With Ben's help, we documented everything. Patricia had spent $89,000 on my cards in 6 months. The investigation is ongoing. Derek's family found a small 3-bedroom apartment in Renton, according to mutual friends. Patricia apparently complains daily about the downgrade. Gregory had to take a job as a financial consultant, actually working for the first time in years. Amanda's influencer career never took off. Derek filed for divorce 3 weeks after moving out. His lawyer initially demanded half the house's value as marital property. My lawyer destroyed that argument in 10 minutes with the deed and Washington state law. Derek gets nothing from my house or my savings. He did try one last manipulation. Vic, can we talk? Maybe we were too hasty. Let me guess, I said over the phone. Your family's apartment is cramped and they're driving you crazy. Silence. The answer is no, Derek. You made your choice. The divorce was finalized last month. I kept everything I came into the marriage with, which was virtually everything. Now, 3 months after they left, I'm sitting in my peaceful home, working from my reclaimed office, sleeping in my own bedroom. I'm repainting the walls colors I actually like, not Patricia's tasteful neutrals. I've also started dating again, casually, carefully. The first thing I tell anyone is, I own my house outright, and no, you can't move your family in. It's a surprisingly effective filter. Last week, I ran into Amanda at a coffee shop. She pretended not to see me, but I heard her on the phone. I can't believe she kept everything. That house should have been partly ours. I smiled into my latte. Some people never learn that you can't claim what isn't yours, no matter how loudly you demand it. My name is Victoria Hayes. I'm 34 years old. I own my house, I own my life, and I'll never apologize for protecting both.